Welcome to the Contemporary Issues Adult Sunday School class. Nice to have you all here in the new year. Haven't seen you since last year. 2025 sounds so much like a science fiction movie to me. I remember when I was young thinking about the change to 2000 and now it's 2025. It just sounds like something way off in the future, but no more. We are happy today to have Rhonda Smith with us as our guest speaker, our Director of Kids Programming, and we get to know a little about Rhonda and all that she does. And so we are pleased to do that. But first, our usual announcements. Zoomers, nice to have you with us. Please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen when you're not speaking. And we are recording this for future playback. And any other announcements? Vicky?
Well, Alice and I were just talking, and at one point we mentioned that we might do a soup luncheon, sometime this winter. So maybe kind of look at the first Sunday in February, which would be Groundhog's Day. So possibly, let's kind of tentatively look at that. And I'm just thinking crock pots of soup and maybe some cornbread and just some appetizers and something like that. So just have an after Sunday school fellowship. So look at February 2nd for that.
Okay. And any other quick announcements? We usually take a minute and recognize things that are in the news. And this week there were the usual bad things in the news, of course, but I kind of looked at Jimmy Carter's passing as a good thing and an opportunity to talk about somebody whose life was really very meaningful. And so next week, I'm going to do a little review of Jimmy's life and his books. He wrote 30, 40 books and interviews and had a lot to say about religion and politics, of course. And so we'll pick out some of the most interesting things about Jimmy's life. Yes, Helen.
Exceptional, only I missed the first half hour and I'm hoping it comes on again.
Okay.
It was on CNN from, I believe it was 5 to 7. And it was how musical he is. He loved jazz and all this. And at the Camp David Accord, the proper name for it, that he is so famous for, that lasted 13 or 14 days. And it was quite embarrassing to the president and his wife, Rosalind. And they had pre-scheduled a group of musicians, of which one was Willie Nelson, and I don't remember all these Western songs that we all know.
Okay.
She would go down and entertain this group, or at least be sociable with them, while her husband was at Camp David continuing this accord thing. And anyway, they say should have a lot of credit for that happening, because there were lulls in the whole meeting that one or two of them wanted to just leave, to quit it. But she
played a remarkable role
because she had this other role. These people were very famous, and yet they were just musicians. And but she sang with them. She sang with Loretta.
We will mention Rosalind too.
It's so good. CNN, if it comes up again sometime.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Let me read just a little bit from the email that I sent out for those that didn't get the email to tell about what the church does with kids programs. The kids ministry is from ages 0 to 11. It's led by Rhonda and includes infants and toddlers and preschoolers up to 5th grade. Then we have preschool also that serves ages 1 to 6. Then the youth program that Cindy Click runs, ages 12 to 18, and young adults 18 to 35. So if you are interested in any of those particular categories, look on the website and read a little bit more. But just a couple of highlights of what Rhonda does. Sundays at 9 a.m. is the traditional kids ministry, and the playground section, which she'll tell us about, the new playground, which is right outside of the family room. There's also a Trek 45, a journey of connection for kids, monthly events, a good grief program supporting kids through loss and transitions, and we'll want to talk to you about that. It's interesting. And then new group Parenting and Beyond for parents with children ranging from infants to middle schoolers. And that looks like a good, helpful program for parents too. So please welcome Rhonda, and she will take questions during her presentation. So we're going to be informal. And if you've got a question about one of the programs, just shout out. So welcome to Rhonda. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for this invitation, Steve, because the more I can connect with you, people in the church, the more that benefits our young families and our kids. So thank you so much for this time. I want to start maybe just with a few minutes where you talk with people right around you about your experience of how you found faith or learned faith. Maybe you grew up in a church and you went to Sunday school, what that experience was like for you. Maybe you didn't, but just kind of think back to how was your faith? What did that look like for you? Maybe you have a story or experience, and maybe just share with a few people around you, and then we'll take some of those stories and experiences and share them together before I get started. So.
Okay.
Which we know it's not. So. Yeah, my rebellion is like. That's how it started. All right. Let's see how well I can get you back. When I'm with children, it usually takes a few hand claps or turning lights off and on, but you guys do a good job of tuning back in. Anybody have something they want to share just about your experience or a story that would be worthwhile for all of us to hear?
I think you'd love to hear this. We were just talking that what you learn as a very, very young child stays with you. Even as an adult, you've got to grow your faith, but you still go back to those big pictures of Jesus, the stories that you had when you were 2 and 3 and 4, 5 years old.
Flannel graphs.
Thank you for that. Yeah, flannel
graphs.
Yeah. And just bringing that up, flannel graphs, when we bring those flannel boards out, kids are just mesmerized because it's slower than the screens that they're used to watching, and it's very different. So, anyone else?
We went to church and Sunday school just because. I mean, there was no discussion. We went as a family every Sunday and.
Yeah. And we, when bringing that up, you would mention both. That, you know, it was common if you grew up in church, that in other generations, we would do both. You would go to Sunday school and church. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
I grew up in a small town, and so our church was our social life.
Yes.
And what was really interesting is we had 2 Methodist churches in this area, which is crazy. I was talking to the what's his face? Not Mark.
Jerry.
Jerry, thank you. Sorry, Jerry.
I know what's his face.
About that, and he said, that was a different kind of denomination.
Yeah, they were split.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It wasn't until our church burned down when I was probably 10 or 11, something like that. And we had to go to the other church and get along, you know?
Get along.
I mean, it wasn't an
Yeah.
issue for me. but
Everybody,
that was
please
our
speak
social
up as loud as you can so we could,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
everybody can hear.
And I'm glad you brought that up because community is a big piece of kids ministry. So it matters. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
What made quite an impression for me is in middle school, I must have been in middle school. So we had an attorney who was our Sunday school teacher, and it just impressed me that an attorney, for some reason, an attorney was willing to give up time to
Yeah.
lead the Sunday school class. I don't remember a whole lot what he said. But the fact that he was committed or interested in
Exactly.
as us, as the preteens, early teens, to be a Sunday school teacher.
Mhm. Yeah.
Quite a-
No, I appreciate that story and I have a similar. He was not an attorney, but somebody who took an interest in me in middle school when I was really struggling to fit in. We had moved away, lived in Vail for about 3 years. And so then coming back to just a different culture back in the school that I went to here in Denver. And he just took an interest in me. Again, I don't remember what he taught. But what I remember is that he cared about me and he helped me to see that I belonged and I mattered. And he wanted to know how my day went. And so that was a powerful connection, more so than the content of what was shared in that class. So, yes.
I went to Catholic grade school, and so part of the curriculum was catechism. And honestly, I don't remember anything about it. My faith has been developed much more here than it did then,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And we didn't talk in class. You couldn't talk. And so all we did was read, or the teacher read to us. And I honestly don't remember what I read.
Yeah. It was like a should, something that you knew you had to do.
And you
Yeah.
better do it.
Thank you for that. I want to pivot to, did you have something else you wanted to share?
Other than the fact that I remember learning everything about the Bible, well, as much as I could at that age, in Sunday school. And then the minister would preach about the stories. So I learned the foundation in Sunday school, and then I could understand the preaching more because I learned the stories in Sunday school, then he would preach about them.
It was the same
It was
story.
the same
Oh,
story.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you. Steve, I'm gonna go, it's the very last slide, I believe. I just want to pivot off of some of the comments that we were talking about. There is just some interesting information here. This is from a book that I brought called Bridging Theory and Practices in Children's Spirituality. But the first chapter is written by someone named Scotty May, and she has been involved in kids ministry, just a pioneer for a long, long time. And so she's a voice that's worth listening to. But she said, what have we learned? And I don't know if you can see this chart here. I know it's kind of small and I tried to post it in there, but I will go through it. What I want you to focus on is what I've highlighted, that there are some seasons in kids ministry that we can just look at with a preposition. So if you go back to the late 1700s when Sunday school started in England, it was due to the fact that children were working in the mines, they were doing factories, they were not going to school. And so boys would be able to go to Sunday school to learn to read. And that's how it started and came into the United States. And actually John Wesley had a lot to do with that as well, setting up Sunday schools where children were learning to read, but they would read the Bible, and that's how they would learn to read. And so that's where Sunday school started. And so then there was some different companies that developed curriculum, and it kind of took off from there. That's where the name Sunday school came from. Well, in 1940, and again, this is not, exact, but kind of an average, 1940 to 1965, that was the time of spiritual formation that we could look at the preposition and say to. It was ministry to children. So children were looked at like a sponge. They're coming empty, and we're going to, as teachers, tell them what they need to know about the Bible, about God. They are going to learn religion. So that was the focus. Now, it's content centered, and as some of us have talked about, we don't really remember the content. Maybe some of the relationships we had with those teachers, we remember more. That's something to think about. But you can kind of look at it as a training camp, or maybe there were rewards. I know early on when my boys were really young, we did, what was it called? Awana, where they could learn scripture verses and then they'd get prizes for everything that they would win. And so, there's that part of it. But really the biblical evidence and principle was hide God's word in your heart. Come to Sunday school and let me tell you what you need to know, because you're coming as a blank slate. Now, is that wrong? No. And there are still some pieces of that way to teach that we use, but not so much. There's been a shift from in 1965 to 1990 where the preposition becomes for. Children's ministry is for kids. And then it became, let's make it fun and let's throw candy and let's do all these amazing, wonderful things. And there's value in some of that as well. So maybe the teacher then becomes more of a planner or a ringmaster, bringing and making sure that kids are having fun, because then they'll come back. They'll tell their parents, I want to come back because that was fun. And so there were those years where that was, and you can read about some of the big mega churches that had incredible programs for kids ministry, and those kids wanted to go. I remember going to a training in California, Southern California, in Orange County, and they said, we have to compete with Disneyland. So yeah, we got to make this fun, and kids will come. And so there is a part of that that's important. We want it to be for kids.
What church was that?
That was, what was it called? I know this, Rick Warren's church.
Oh, Saddleback.
Saddleback, yeah.
I went to Chuck Smith's church for about 8 months when I was in the Navy.
Okay, yeah. Well, Saddleback had, it was like if you were in kids ministry, you needed to go to Saddleback to learn how to do kids ministry back in the day.
Okay.
Rhonda,
Yes,
I just wanted to say, we should go get it.
yes, definitely.
Sure.
So, my kids who grew up here at St. Andrew in the 90s and beyond, this Christmas, we just went through this exercise of, so Steve and I are cleaning things out. I had saved most all of the things that they had crafted and things, artwork that they had made here at St. Andrew. And so I sent them pictures. I said, okay, this is a trip down memory lane, but either you want them or we're gonna do something else with them. And we had the most amazing conversation about some of those pieces of things that they had made that they particularly remember. So that whole period where it's done fun, that was my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and we still want it to be fun. That's definitely still a goal for us. So, but that's more where the focus was, as far as where children's ministry was going. More recent, 1990 through present, the preposition has become with. That through a lot of research and studies, people are recognizing that children don't come to church as empty sponges that need to be filled. They already have a connection to God. And it's finding that and recognizing that we are co-sojourners on a journey, that we are learning together, and that we can learn from children as much as they learn from us. And boy, being in kids ministry as long as I have, it's been about 25 years, I can tell you stories where kids have touched my heart and helped me grow in my faith by the things that they say and the questions that they ask. And so the focus is shifting more to this process-centered way of doing kids ministry. so that we're going on this journey together. The content approach is we live it, it's integrated, and be rooted in love. And I love that. Now I want you to recognize there are pieces of our program here in each one of these categories, but that we want to focus more on the with. And that's kind of the premise of when I talk about playground in a few minutes, you will see the value of that. There is a story in this book, and I didn't mark it and I should have, but it was Fred Rogers, a story about him talking with someone, a child who had a disability, and at the end of this conversation, Fred Rogers asked this child to pray for him. And the people who were watching, one of the people came up afterward and said, that was really kind of you to ask that child to pray for you. And he said, oh, it wasn't me being kind to the child. I want this child's prayers because what he has had to go through in his life, he has probably had such a rich relationship with God that him intercessing and praying for me is valuable. I was asking for me. And so the next preposition that we're hoping to move into is by, that ministry is by the children to us, incorporating that where we start to see kids that they can actually minister to us. So I hope that you see that. So I want to back up, and then that should help, that little introduction into seeing why we do what we do here at St. Andrew. So our vision statement or mission statement is inviting children into welcoming spaces that foster the worship of God and the wonder of God's story. So we have lots of different spaces. We want the kids to learn God's story, not just individual Bible stories, but how all those Bible stories fit together to show God's one big story of God's love for each of us and that we are part of that story. But we also want kids to understand what it means to worship God. And do you teach them? How do kids learn that? And so we've been exploring that in kids ministry over the years and shifting and changing things, trying to figure out how do kids best learn how to worship God or learn faith. We know that we can teach religion if we're listening, right? Catechism classes, but we want kids to grow in their faith. And how does that happen? How best does that happen? So I want to spend a little bit of time in that. These are some of the spaces that we have that Steve already shared with you. We have special classes, annual events, monthly gatherings for our older kids. We do the kids ministry groups. We try not to call it Sunday school because we don't want kids who didn't grow up in church or parents who didn't grow up in a church to think this is a school, but that it's small groups, that our kids come together in groups and they're learning together to grow in their faith. 10:30, I'll talk more about playground, which is a new concept that we have started and is kind of taking off around the nation as well. And then our Good Grief support groups, which I'd love to answer questions about, and that's another program that we offer. So we offer lots of different spaces for kids and families to help them find faith, grow in faith, however that's going to happen. The next slide here is kind of a picture. If you go downstairs into the kids ministry area, we have 2 mirrors, and this is our vision, that we want every child who comes to St. Andrew Kids to know that they belong and that they are loved. And those 2 things are so valuable in faith formation. I had forgotten some little things that we use with our volunteers to help them to see how kids' faith is formed. So I don't know, could you maybe I think Kathleen brought them up, pass those around. This illustration is like tree ring, and it comes from the book, Will Our Children Have Faith by John Westerhoff. So as these are coming around, I just want to focus on that a little bit. If you skip down to the next slide, next one. Here you go. So it's the analogy of tree rings. And we do this in our leader training to help people to see, how does faith get formed? Is it because trust me, when we ask people to serve in kids ministry, I don't know the Bible. I can't teach. And it's like, no. This isn't about teaching. This is about growing and learning together. And so we follow this faith forming process. When you think of tree rings, that the inner tree ring is experienced faith. That first of all, children need to experience faith. And where do we experience faith? Everywhere. Yeah. Where are some other specific places we experience faith?
Natural.
Home, yes, the home, nature, school, church, family, all of those things are places that kids experience faith. And it may look different for every single child. It is different for every
It's
single
music
child.
also.
Yes, definitely. So experienced is that first tree ring that kids start their faith journey. Experiencing it, coming. When families bring their kids to church and they're able to be a part of, whether they're in the sanctuary or in kids ministry downstairs. And by the way, we love both. We want kids to be in both bases. They start to experience what faith is about. The next tree ring is belonging. If there's enough experience here, they start to have a sense of belonging. And we want kids and their parents to know that their children belong, that their kids are safe. That's a huge value for us in kids ministry. As you know, have safe sanctuary guidelines that we follow. Our leaders go through background checks. We have 2 people in each room with our kiddos, and just to protect our volunteers, but also just protect children, because safety is one of those things that the child know that they belong, that this is a safe place, and that matters. So that sense of belonging is that next ring that helps to develop their faith. And then a lot of people think this happens in middle school, high school, the searching begins. They're starting to ask questions, maybe during confirmation, but actually it happens much sooner than that. So I think you have brought up the preschoolers, the 3, 4s, 5-year-olds. The questions they ask are incredible, and they start searching. And what does this mean for me? I want to tell this story. It's this little boy. He started with us maybe about 4 years ago. He was adopted, and some pretty challenging behavior issues. And dad and mom worked so hard with him, and they would come early. They would help get him ready to be transitioned into the room, but he just liked to put up a fight about everything. Well, one of the things that I still laugh about is I was walking up and down the halls, and Kathleen, who oversees our First Look program, which is the preschoolers in their faith formation, she was talking to them, wrapping up their large group time and talking to them about how we can follow Jesus. And I hear this little boy say, "I'm not following Jesus." And those were very common comments for this little guy. One day, his dad said to us, "Thank you for seeing the child and not the behavior, because he wants to keep coming back." Well, now this little guy's in elementary school. And I want to show you, if you go to the next slide, Steve, right there. He loves coming to playground. He loves coming to kids groups. He listens. He interacts. He participates. Has lots to say. But he wrote on that green sheet of paper again. I'm sorry, my visuals are hard to read. But that paper says, "What do you want to pray for today?" And in his writing, the best we can decipher, it says, "Days to get better as my life to get better." And he was drawing a picture of what was on the altar. Because we were having the kids notice, what is an altar? What's on the altar? Draw a picture of that. He's engaged. And so to see a little boy struggling, and over 4 years' time, what's happening in his faith journey, because he's experienced faith. He belongs. He knows he's safe here. He knows he belongs here. He's searching, not sure he was buying into it at first, but would ask questions. And now the last ring that you have on your little paper is owned faith, when a person begins to own faith, their own faith. Now, I will say that I don't think that those are just the stages for children. I think as adults, we go through that as well. And you can go back to the beginning and back out again. So maybe if we go through a crisis in our life, that we may have an owned faith, but then all of a sudden we're back in the searching. We're asking questions and saying, do I really believe this? And so I love this illustration to remind us that this is a journey of in and out of all of the rings that we can think through as we think about a faith forming in each of us. Here's a quote from John Westerhoff that says, faith cannot be taught by any method of instruction. We can only teach religion. We can know about religion, but we can only expand in faith, act in faith, live in faith. And it can be inspired within a community of faith. So, Steve, if you would go to the picture of just of all those pictures there. Yeah, there we go. Just some visuals for you to see how kids experience and belong here at St. Andrew and how that impacts their faith. Our kids groups, they're with other kids their age so that they can ask questions and relate to one another. But they're also, when we do playground, they're able to see you. They're able to see their parents. They're coming to the sanctuary and they're listening and they're watching. Now they may be moving and restless and you think they're not listening. They're listening. They're watching. They're observing each of us. And so how you interact with children, and I love the photo of Rev Amy with the girls because she gets down at their level and welcomes them and helps them know you matter, you belong here, and we're glad you're here. And those girls, I'll tell you, will probably never, ever forget that. We have opportunities for camps where lots of kids come together to have fun. So, you know, that ministry for kids, we still do that too. The upper right-hand corner, we like to do missions projects where the kids have opportunities to give and serve. So they realize that their faith journey is important, that they can give just like their parents and like we can give. So it's really important for kids to see all of us in our faith journey so they can learn from us, whether you're serving in kids ministry as a volunteer or whether you're greeting people, families upstairs. I had somebody say, what do I do when somebody's misbehaving, you know, and how do I help that family? And I love that question because sometimes it's rough and you think this might be disturbing someone else's worship. So helping the family, giving them materials. We have worship bags upstairs for kids who are in the service that they can have. So they have some things to hold and to do while they're worshiping because they're learning. And trust me, it's not, kids will move. They will move. Always. That's what being a child is all about. And they're learning that way. But the more we can encourage that and welcome them and love the parents and support them, the more that child will grow and be able to settle into what worship looks like. I'll just transition very quickly and then we'll go into questions, but Playground is something that we started because we wanted kids to see more of what's going on in our sanctuary, how we worship. So many children, what we have found through research is that they grow up in these churches and they go through kids ministry and youth ministry, but they're not in the sanctuary. And they grow right out of the church because they never get connected to the bigger congregation, to what the community is all about. And so we want to tap into that. 3 of the values that we follow in kids ministry is curiosity. We always want to tap into kids' curiosity instead of telling them what to believe. We want them to be able to ask questions and wonder and think about what faith means to them. We also want kids to have some choices. Every child learns differently. Not every child learns the same. So we'll do different types of lessons to help kids learn. But one of the most important is community. Kids need to know they're part of the community and that they're connected. So when they do grow up, they don't stop coming. We do know some kids do stop coming, but then what we also see is when they start to marry and have their own children and their children, it's time for baptism, they're interested again and they want that for their own children, may circle back into their faith. So everyone's journey is different and there's no shame or criticism. It's welcoming people where they're at in that journey. But just playground is a way to help kids see, oh, I see people singing. I see people giving. I see people taking communion. What is that about? What's that on the altar? All of those things that they would not see if they weren't upstairs. And I'll tell you, there are families who didn't like us changing our 10:30 model to playground because they enjoy dropping their kids off and worshiping on their own. And so we want to give those choices. That 9 o'clock is still that model, but that 10:30 is an opportunity for families to say, I want my children to learn what worship looks like for us and watch and observe. It's not always easy. It's not always pretty, but it's happening. Trust me, it's happening. So,
Rhonda,
yes.
so at 10:30, how many kids are coming up to the playground area? And are they standing, looking through the glass at what's going on?
Good question. Yes, we do. When there's certain things going on, we'll bring their attention. That we make sure that the sermon, they can hear it on the screen. So just they might catch some words. As far as numbers, that's a big issue because we've had, like the sweet spot would be anywhere from 5 to 12 children. We've had up to 30. Yeah, especially if there's a special event that's happening after the 10:30 service. That doesn't lend itself well to playground. So we have backup plans for that where I take the older children back into the kids area and we do some other things. Because we really want that to be an intimate time where we're listening to kids. We may ask a question or two about the sermon, about what's being taught or what's happening, and letting them draw a picture or responding to that. Just helping them to be engaged with materials that will help them to know what's going on in the sanctuary. But when you have so many kids, it becomes crowd control. So we're still learning. It's not perfect. And we're just trying to work that out and figure out how best to do that. But we just think it's so important that kids see worship happening upstairs in the sanctuary.
Rhonda,
So, yes.
when I was little, I grew up Presbyterian and my dad was an elder in the church. And I remember they would take the children down front and do a children's presentation, prayer, whatever. And then when it came to be time for adult stuff, sermon, whatever, we'd get up and go somewhere else. Has this church ever considered doing anything like that, having a children?
I think they're used to
There,
be,
when
yeah.
I first got here, they used to do that for a couple of years, when, wasn't it Christie?
Yeah, I think so.
Christie Boyle did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of fallen out of favor with many churches from what I've seen.
And why is that?
And why is that, do you think?
Good question. So probably as long as I'm here, it won't happen unless it's a special event. And here's why, because a lot of people, it becomes a performance. Aren't they cute? They're so, my child just said something really funny and and so there's that piece of it. Now it can be an amazing tool of learning for all of us together, because sometimes those children messages mean just as much to us as adults as it does to kids. But then the other thing is having kids on a screen. Everything is on YouTube. So we have done it a couple times where we focus, I've done one and back, I don't know if you remember when Jen Kleppel was here, she did one where the kids are facing they're on the stairs and they're facing the front. and then we focus on the who's ever doing the story, the teaching, so that the kids aren't on camera. We do have kids who, parents are very adamant about their kids not being filmed, or on the internet. So that's a big part of it, safety. But also just, again, I want people to see children as faith, kids, people on a faith journey, just like us. That they're not just cute, funny, sweet, but that they're just, what they have to offer is very, very valuable. Now, you can argue that a kid's sermon does that, and it does. And I think those types of scenarios work better in a small church, because again, we have the security issue of bringing all the kids upstairs, bringing the kids back downstairs. That's why playground works, because we're still near the families, and we can make sure they get back to their families safely. But even walking through the atrium, there's challenges, if a child disappears. So we just have to keep safety as one of our primary values.
If the concept of a church family is still valid, so much of our society is age segregated, and as you said, we learn from children. Older people learn from children. We learn from older people. With all of the challenges, competition for time, whether it be Hebrew school, other sectarian schools, Christian educators, etc., and so forth, having the large parish catchment area that St. Andrews has to become less segregated, because we do meet each other, we learn from each other. We're all on a faith journey. Jesus had something to say, be as little children.
Yes.
You envision opportunities, particularly mission trips and other activities that are intergenerational. Just to cultivate the sense you belong to a family. If that family is archaic, a community, a community or a religious commune, but do you have any thoughts about continuing to develop opportunities for interaction among generations, so we don't continue to perpetuate a segregated orientation to Christianity?
Thank you for that question. I love that. Yes, we are definitely always looking for opportunities, and we've tried different things over the years. I know that community supper that's coming up, is that January or February?
February 2nd.
Okay. That's definitely an intergenerational community opportunity. We've tried, we've done some things that have involved Track 45 kids, which is our 4th and 5th graders, and youth and older adults. I don't know if it was through Sages at the time, but where we had a Valentine party together. There's been some events, but yeah, I think it's important for us to look at how do we make those opportunities so this is just a way of life and not just a special event that we attend, but that kids start to see, oh, I know you. And so maybe even the kids being in playground is an opportunity for you to stop and say hello to them. Or when we're doing greeting one another in service, making sure you reach out to a young family and saying hello to them, telling them your name, we're glad you're here. Having a donut with them in fellowship hall, those just little opportunities over time to make sure that kids are connecting to others in the church besides their parents and kids their age. But I think it's important that we think about that, opportunities for that. I would say Rev Amy has a real heart for that, and so she's always going to be helping to look for ways. All the pastors do here. I have always felt so supported. When I brought up the idea of playground, I've heard from other church, children's ministry leaders that, yeah, just be prepared. Your pastor will probably say no. Well, that was not the case here. I just, presented what it's all about, and it was, yes, right away. When do you want to start? How can we help you? So, our pastoral staff is amazing and recognizing the value of children in our congregation.
They all have kids.
Great.
Yes,
Yes.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all
that's
kids.
true.
I just wanted to say, I was telling Eric that my experience as a child, my parents would drop us off for Sunday school. Do you have that much anymore, or is it usually parents that are here to worship? And then they bring their children down? Do children get dropped off for Sunday school?
Not so much. I do know parents who drop off and then they head to fellowship hall and have some time of coffee and donuts, just.
Yeah.
They may not attend service.
Right.
But
Right.
not dropping off, and we don't encourage that
Right.
because of security and safety
Sure.
issues. If
Yeah.
anything were to happen with the child, we want the parent on
Here,
the premises.
Well, what that resulted for me, as I was telling Eric, was that a lot of the church people, the adult church people, became my church family because my parents weren't there. And so a lot of the Sunday school teachers that worked downstairs became my church family. And then after Sunday school, they would take us upstairs for our parents to, meet us and stuff like that. So I got acquainted with a lot of the church adults because of that through Sunday school, so. And that was really important in my development.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I want to give our Zoomers a chance to make a question or comment so they don't feel like they're interrupting us here in the room. Does anybody have a question or comment about kids ministry? If you do, go ahead and just weigh in when you want to. Don't feel like you're interrupting us. Rhonda, can I ask about the Good Grief program? That sounds so interesting. Do you have many in that now? And what do they do in the grief discussion class?
Yeah, this started out as Rainbows. So some of you may be familiar with that name, Rainbows International. We changed the name years ago because there was some confusion. Rainbows isn't very well known here in Colorado. And then being an all-inclusive progressive church, it would be confusing. We actually had a family come and they had the wrong idea of what Rainbows was about. And so I realized we need to be really clear to the community, what is this program that we're offering? And so there are small groups and we've ranged from preschool through high school, depending on who registers. We try kindergarten is really the youngest we like to go. But depending on who registers, we have made it so there's 2 sessions a year, 6-week sessions, one in the fall and one in the winter, where kids can come and it's not therapy, it's not counseling. Our facilitators are trained in listening and helping to ask questions and lead activities that help kids to connect with other kids who are also experiencing grief from a loss in their family. Now that loss could be a death of a parent, a sibling. It could be divorce. It could be incarceration. It could be, I would say what's trending is a person in the family who is struggling with addiction, who's not available. So it feels like death, but it happens over and over and over. And so that, honestly, our last session, that was the issue for every child. And their family, there was a parent who was struggling with addiction, and most of those parents have passed. They died from that overdose or addiction. And so those kids are carrying a lot. And this is a program where they come in and they're like, can I talk about this? Can I talk about my dad here? Is it safe to talk about here? And this is a place where they can express their feelings, their emotions, and it's safe. And they find someone else and say, your dad died too? And they start to connect. And that's where the program is so powerful. Most of our kids who do the 6 weeks come back. They want to do it again, because it's so healing for them, not because of any magical things we do. It's just providing the space, the discussion, the open-ended questions.
They probably don't have any other place to do that, do they? If they're not in counseling.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Where else would
some of
they?
the kids are in counseling, but some aren't. And counseling is different, and so we let the kids know too that they don't have to talk. If they're not ready and they don't want to share their story, that's okay. They can still learn and listen from others in the group that usually changes after one or two sessions, and they want to share.
What's your average attendance?
That varies too. And so typically we have about 3 groups, and in each group is usually around 5 children. High schoolers, we have a lot of interest from high schoolers, but getting high schoolers to commit is really hard because of their schedules and so. Yes. Good question. So those who know about rainbows, we're still connected. I stay connected to the Rainbows International Organization so that they can be referred to St. Andrew's program. But I reach out to school counselors, therapists in the area. Just have a community partners that deal with children who all health. So there's lots of connections that we have, and I just send out emails. I visit. I just went to a high school last November and handed out information at a fair that they had on well-being. So just trying to get the word out. People like you, if you know someone in your family who's going through a struggle, divorce, whatever, those children, even if they act like they're doing fine, they need to talk. They need to know that they have a safe
Are
place
those
to share.
sessions in the evening?
They are. We meet on Monday nights from 5:30 to 7. So.
Isn't it important too, that if you invite somebody to come along to go, that maybe you go with them, you know, especially if they're not used to the church, or like if I had a neighbor or something, I could say, you know, I'll go with you, let's go, you know. I think that's encouraging for people, you know, to not just tell them about it, but be willing to go.
Yes, definitely. I will say that once the kids are in groups, that's confidential, so the
Right.
kids learn that this is a safe space. We don't tell other people's stories to others when we leave this space. What you say in this space, unless someone is harming you or you are having thoughts of harming yourself. Otherwise, what is said in that space is confidential. So coming, bringing them, I'll be waiting out here for you is important, but they need to know that they have a place where a parent or another family member or someone else doesn't get to hear. They get to choose what they want to tell their parents when they come out, what they've learned. But if there's things that sometimes they have emotions they want to share that they don't feel safe sharing with the parent because they're worried it'll upset their parent. And so it's nice for them to be able to share those feelings in a safe space. But yes, making them feel welcome is huge.
We've got about 6 minutes left. Questions, comments? Alan?
I've learned a lot today. Yes. And I'm wondering if families who have experienced the children's ministry here at St. Andrews, and they decide to say move to a different part of the country, what type of recommendations would you give to a family that has to be relocated to have some consistency in the programs that are offered here at St. Andrews? Either go to another Methodist church or what? How common is it that they would say go to a Methodist church in New York and find some similarities in the programs?
Question. There are so many different types of churches, even within Methodism, where, it could be a very small church and there's really not much of a kids ministry, to a very large church where there is. The family has to look and decide what they value. We send cards to kids who move away and just to try to stay connected to them. And sometimes it takes them a while to find a program, a church that fits their family's values. But that's really important. And I'm glad you brought that up because we are just starting a parenting class. We tried this years and years ago. There was some young families who wanted to have parents meet together while the kids were in kids programming, that they could meet and connect. And it was going really well, and then they moved away, and then it was kind of floundering a little bit, and then COVID hit. And so it's never been rebuilt from there. I am so excited because since COVID, we have less children that attend, but we have more children that attend every week. So the commitment of the families that are coming is incredible. They're here almost every week, whereas before it'd be, you might see a family once or twice a month. And there are those, if that's still the case, families are busy, sports, activities, other things going on, going to the mountains, whatever the case may be, but more families are coming regularly. There's not as many, but I realize that this is a prime opportunity to connect those parents together so that they can support each other as you do in this class, that they feel cared for, that they can laugh together, they can grow together. We've not really done a great job of providing that for our young families. So I'm really hoping that this takes off. Our first class will be next Sunday. And obviously I can't be a part of it. I'm with Kids Ministry, but we're hoping that, and if this may be something that you might be interested in, we're looking for mentors who might just be able to come, even if you were there once a month, to just, you've raised a family, you've gone through a lot, you have words of wisdom that you can share. Just loving on these young families and being there for them and connecting would be a great way to share.
You need volunteers for the kids, small kids programs?
Always, yes,
Always.
yeah, there's always opportunities for that. So we love to have leaders in our small groups. And again, you don't have to be a Bible scholar in kids ministry. We learn together.
Do you
And
provide curriculum?
we do, we provide everything for you. So the resources, the curriculum it's all in the room ready for you. We send it out during the week so you can preview the lesson. We make it really, really simple because we want you to be able to focus on loving the kids and interacting and just being there for them, supporting them. We also can use people who see families upstairs it's a big church. And unfortunately, kids ministry is way on the other side of the building. So helping them to navigate that, just helping families know they're welcome and loved here. Even when some of the kids might be yelling or crying or disruptive, that's probably when the families need it most, to hear that they're welcome here.
Rhonda, yeah, I'm just curious, I've been noticing, Jason's picture. Does he fit into this, or is it just something else that starts there?
I think maybe is
He's
he
just
part
a
of the
Zoomer. Yeah, that's just a picture of ours.
Fine. Oh, I thought.
Yeah. No. There, we set our Zoomers to the side.
I wonder how many in the congregation have ever been downstairs?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's been a long time when we redid the hallways down in the children's area. We did an open house, but it's probably a good idea to do open houses more frequently so that people do come down and visit us and see what we're all about.
Just curious about your parenting class. Do you have a curriculum for that?
At
Or is
this
it-
point, it's nothing. It's just, here's what we want. And so these first couple of meetings will be, maybe there'll be a survey. We're going to have a leadership meeting this week on asking families, what is it that you want? Do you want speakers? Do you want a podcast? Do you want to study a book together? Do you want faith formation for families? Or is this just, we want to just care for each other and have a time to be with other parents? We're going to just kind of feel, there's already 12 families signed up. So we're really excited about this. But yeah, no curriculum yet. So if you have ideas, share them with
And
me.
when
That
do
would be
they
great.
meet?
So we've only set up meetings for January and February because we're not sure how it's going to work with childcare and kids ministry. So they meet January 12th at 9 a.m. And then the fourth Sunday, they'll meet at 10:30. And the same second Sundays at 9, fourth Sundays at 10:30 for January, February. Then hopefully from there, we can get some consistency and decide most people want to come at 9 o'clock. My hope is they could come at 9, have that family time, kids can come to programming downstairs, and then they go to church as a family at 10:30. That would be encouraged, but we just kind of want to see who comes and what they need.
What about that church meeting? on February 2nd, if you don't have an opportunity for people to tour downstage.
I'll bring that up with them.
If
Leadership.
people are here,
Yeah.
come down and see what we're about.
About out of time. Go ahead, Vicki.
And also, if there's anything that you think that we can do as an older generation with the parents, let us know, you know, if they
Who are you
need.
calling older?
Well, we're all past child raising, you know.
Right.
So,
Wiser, the wiser generation.
I saw that Survivor. Yeah. Oh, good, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, we're excited about that. So if you heard anything today and you're thinking, I might be interested in learning more about that, how I might be supported in that way, let me know. It doesn't mean you have to be downstairs every Sunday with a group of kids. There are lots of ways to plug in. I know we had a family for a while. Vicki was one of the people that helped. They had 2 children with pretty severe special needs. And needed to have a room so that parents could worship upstairs that was safe for them, where they could play and be loved. And Vicki was a part of that team. They've since found another church that's better, works better for their location. But sometimes we have those needs as well, where we have some kids with special needs who need a buddy. So that's an opportunity.
Okay, we need to wrap up. I want to ask a quick question, Rhonda, if I can. Are kids any different today than they were 25 years ago when you started for teaching? Are they better behaved or worse behaved? What do they think about Jesus and God? Do they ask questions? Are they interested?
They ask a lot of questions. They're very interested.
Good.
And I would say answer that with a yes and a no. There's a lot of things that are the same and there are a lot of things that are very different. I mean, obviously our children grow up with screens at a very young age, and that definitely changes the brain chemistry and how kids interact with the world. And that is very different. But there are things very much the same. Kids still need love. They need to belong. They are curious and want to know about God. And some of their experiences in their faith are amazing to hear what they say. I have one quick story that I have to share because it's just so precious. Kathleen is very good at helping to pull out questions, ask questions that pull out thoughtful responses from children. But one of the things she was talking about with these 4 and 5-year-olds was that Jesus is always with you, always. Well, this mom came to let Kathleen know a week or 2 later that her little girl was crying in her room, and she went in and said, what's the matter? And Miss Kathleen said that Jesus is always with me and I don't want him in my room right now. And I thought, there you go. There's a theologian for you. He's already thinking about the omnipresence of God. So.
Good. Thank you, Rhonda. We learned a lot. Thanks, everybody. See you next week. Yeah.